I'd like to add to Carrie's welcome and thank you for participating today. My name is Paul Michelin, and I'm the branch chief of the Environmental Impact Statement branch in the Waste Confidence Directorate. At today's meeting, I'll give a brief history of Waste Confidence, outline key aspects of the draft generic environmental impact statement and proposed rule, and explain how you can comment on these documents. Then we'll get to the public comment portion, which is the heart of the meeting. Waste confidence accomplishes two things. It generically addresses the environmental impacts of continued storage and makes a determination about the feasibility of safe storage and the time frame for repository availability. The draft generic environmental impact statement for waste confidence satisfies part of the Commission's obligations for the National Environmental Policy Act for reactor licensing and relicensing and the licensing and relicensing of spent fuel storage facilities. The draft environmental impact statement also serves as the regulatory basis to support the proposed waste confidence rule. The environmental impact statement and proposed rule only cover the time frame after the licensed life for reactor operations. However, it is important to note that the proposed rule on waste confidence does not license any particular site or facility, nor does it allow for long-term storage of spent nuclear fuel at any site. The NRC's history with waste confidence started when the Commission issued the rule back in 1984. Since then, the rule has been updated, most recently in 2010. In 2012, the rule was challenged, and the Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit vacated the 2010 rule. The Court identified 3 deficiencies within the Commission's environmental analysis to support the 2010 waste confidence rule. The Court found that the analysis didn't evaluate the environmental effects of failing to secure permanent disposal of spent nuclear fuel. It also directed the Commission to provide a forward-looking analysis of spent fuel pool leaks and the environmental consequences of spent fuel pool fires. The Court did conclude that a generic approach, either with an environmental assessment or an environmental impact statement, would appropriately address the issues associated with waste confidence. Following the Court's decision, the Commission directed the staff to prepare an environmental impact statement, evaluating these issues with the possibility of issuing an updated waste confidence rule. There are 2 things that I would like you to remember. The first is that waste confidence is just a small part of the overall environmental analysis for reactor or storage facility licensing or relicensing. Secondly, the waste confidence rule does not license any facility or authorize storage after the expiration of a facility's license. The draft statement describes the impacts of continuing to store spent nuclear fuel beyond the licensed life for operation of a reactor, whether in a spent fuel pool or at an independent spent fuel storage installation located at both the reactor and away from reactor sites. The draft statement describes why we're revisiting waste confidence. It discusses the alternatives considered. It describes how environmental impacts were evaluated. It describes what facilities are covered and the environmental impacts of continued storage at reactor sites and away from reactor sites. It also contains information on the cost of the alternatives to the rulemaking. It describes the cumulative environmental impacts of continued storage, and it contains information on the feasibility of a repository and the feasibility of safe storage of spent fuel. The draft statement assessed impacts of continued fuel storage for 3 time frames based on when a repository will become available. There's a short-term time frame, or 60 years beyond the licensed life for operation of a reactor. There was a long-term time frame, 100 years beyond the short term, or 160 years, and an indefinite storage time frame where no repository becomes available. The draft statement serves as the regulatory basis for the proposed rule. The proposed rule would generically address the environmental impacts of continued storage. These impacts will not be revisited in future site-specific licensing proceedings unless the NRC discovers something about that site that would make the application of the conclusions in the environmental impact statement inappropriate. The proposed rule would revise the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's regulations. Specifically, the citation is Title 10 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Section 51.23. The proposed rule also states that the analysis supports the Commission's determinations that it is feasible to safely store spent nuclear fuel following the licensed life or operation of a reactor. It also states that it is feasible to have a mined geologic repository within 60 years following the licensed life or operation of a reactor. We are specifically seeking comment on whether the final rule should contain these last two statements. To ensure that your comments are considered, they must be received by December 20, 2013. Mailed comments must be postmarked by December 20th. All comments, whether submitted in writing or provided orally, are considered equally. Of course, we're here today so you can tell us your comments on the generic environmental impact statement and proposed rule. Today's comments are being transcribed and will be considered part of the record. You can also leave your comments with the NRC staff located at the registration table, and we will make sure that those comments are added to the document. You may also email, fax, or mail your comments to the NRC. You may also provide comments using the federal e-rulemaking site, www.regulations.gov. That concludes my presentation, and I'll turn it right back over to Jim.